become intimate with the energy of love. Understand even when nobody's around, we are having a relationship with the energy of creation itself. And if you can just be aware of what am I creating to separate me from love? Let me just acknowledge that with gratitude and unify it with love because you are the energy of love.
You're listening to Inspire Me with Jay, where science meets spirit and stories of meditation and the near-death experience awaken what's possible within us all. I'm Jay, and this is your moment to be inspired. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers, and my guest today is Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So you had a near-death experience. Why don't you tell us about what happened during your experience? How did you get to near death in the first place, and then what happened?
Sure. Well, I was 4 years old. I was riding what we call a big wheel, which was really popular in like the 70s. I was across the street from my house, and my brother came to the other side of the road, and he said, "It's time to come home. We're going to the mall," actually, is what he said. And I was at the top of this slope driveway, and he said, "Come home." And I just took off in between the bumpers of two parked cars. There was a car coming, and I was struck. And for me, I remember it's like a blur. And then instantly, the first memory after the blur is being above my body and just seeing my eyes roll in the back of my head. And then it was like the ending of a movie where the scene just closed down to black and then it opened again. And wasn't sure if I was alive or what, but I was sitting on someone. I was sitting on their lap and I was kind of leaning on them and my head was facing down. And and so I know people are thinking this already. Took me a few years before the memories started to roll in. It was a real big emotional charge with me. I knew something had happened, but I was having a hard time placing what. Um, so as the memories come back in, um, I wake up and I look. I just open my eyes and I'm already looking down, and I see hair and I see the bottom of a robe. I'm still not sure what's going on. So my first instinct is what happened. So I turned to ask this person what happened, and it wasn't a person. It was a hooded figure of light. And I paused for a second and asked what happened. And they said, "Stephen, you were in an accident. Put your head down. Everything's going to be all right." And so I did that. And as I did that, I'm kind of just looking at this being's face and just kind of staring at him for a minute. And I remember kind of looking around a bit and seeing kind of like the energetic structure of things. It was almost as if you were to look at a blueprint of, say, a building before the building was there. And so I kind of looked around and it was like that. And I'm staring at this being's face now. And suddenly I'm being pulled and I'm just like stretched like an elastic. And it wasn't even a feeling of like point A to point B. I was still there, but I was being pulled into this other place. And so I don't know how long it was, but I traveled for a moment and then the scene just materialized in front of me. And it's probably the most perfect, epic nature scene that you would ever see. Mountains, flowers, meadows, rivers, paths, and the flowers. I still haven't seen flowers like that today. Haven't seen colors like that. It was like the colors were alive and they were vibrating, and everything was so crystal clear. It's like being in a glass tube TV and then being put in a high definition television. And so I'm watching this scene and I'm starting to notice figures around me and I'm noticing the colors are kind of moving and vibrating. And I'm like getting the sense that this is like the greatest carnival on earth, or greatest celebration. Like that was my first feeling from being at whatever place this was. And so I noticed people are playing in like the background, foreground, kind of like all around me. and they're just like kind of like people playing. And I noticed this elderly man and this young girl off to my left, and the being is kind of like standing kind of with me but behind me. And I notice this elderly man and this little girl playing, and she lets out this laugh, and it just travels right to me and touches me in the center of my chest. And it was like an instant knowing of love, like everything came from here and everything would return to here. And that in order to be here, you had to be the energy or the frequency of love. And somehow I got that download in that moment that would be unpacked much later. So as it touched me, I knew everything came from love and would return to it, and that this was my home. And it was like that love that touched me had become me. And it was like, I'm home. And it just felt incredible. You can't describe it. And these people that I was witnessing, it was like, to my perception, they were over here and over there, yet they were right next to me. And so this energy touches me. I get this some type of instant download. I want to stay. And that's when the being says, it's not your time. We have other things to show you. And it was like somebody pulled away a Broadway curtain or something. That whole scene just went whoop. And I'm standing in this type of dark room. But it's almost like, it's not pitch black. It's like a night sky, but there weren't any stars. Yeah, it wasn't pitch black. And I'm just standing there, and I'm now by myself. And I start to notice these lines forming, going straight down and straight across, like a grid pattern or a waffle. And they're kind of bluish white. And I have the thought, what's that? And that's when I'm answered by this being guide. And they tell me that that's the quantum field. This is what connects all living beings together as one. That's it. And these are mostly just like one-liner sentences to explain what I'm seeing. And then later, a lot of contact later. And so this is the quantum field. This is what connects all living beings together as one. And then that just fades. These lines just fade away. And I'm still in the same room. And I notice something glowing, kind of like, I would say, up to my left, if I could perceive it, how we would. And it looks exactly like a credit card, but it's missing a corner, and it has circuits on it. And to me, I'm like, what's that? If anybody's ever seen a motherboard in a computer look kind of like that, I think, what's that? And then I'm answered. And the being says, this is your divine blueprint. This is the original image you were made in. And everyone has one. Okay. And that fades. And then the next thing I see is this pillar of light just drop down in front of me. And it's just like a straight pillar of light. And I think to myself, what's that? And then the being answers me, this is you as you enter the world, and you'll spend your energy to have an experience in reality. And as the being says, you'll spend your energy, I see these kind of cords that are leaving this light column in front of me. And they're going out to something, and I'm trying to see where they're ending, and they are deposited in like this screen. There's like this screen around me, and it looks like little TV sets, but I would say there are memories. And as I'm kind of looking and perceiving this and thinking about it, and whatever thinking mechanism I had at the time, I'm wondering, what's that? The being says, all of your experiences, your feelings, and your emotions will be recorded in this screen for later review. And it didn't feel judgmental at all. It was just like, I'm accepting. Obviously, I'm 4 years old. I'm just being told what's happening. Then I noticed there's these other beings that are up above, kind of like on top of the screen. And the screen is almost like 3/4 of a circle around me. And so the being explains, this is like a life review, but you won't have yours now. You'll have yours while you're alive. And people do not need to die to have their life review. or enter heaven, was basically the few words that I got about this experience of coming in as love and then spending my energy to interact with reality. And so that scene fades. They give me, very little about it, but to the point. And that's, classic. These beings, these angelic beings, they'll give you a lot packed in a small amount. So that scene fades. I'm standing there, and then I see this triangle approach me. And it's just coming closer, and it's coming closer, and it's coming closer. And it stops in front of me. And it has a point on each tip, one at the top, one on each tip, and one larger one in the center. And it's like they're all connected. Then I think to myself, what's this? And the being says, this is Father, Mother, Son, make these three one. And this was like a Cracker Jack riddle for quite a few years. That was in my brain as I was trying to figure it out and just live my life. This is Father, Mother, Son. You'll make these three one. Now, later in life, I understood I was seeing a very complex quantum physics theory called a triangle singularity. And that it was really about polarity. And so that comes later. And so I see this triangle, Father, Mother, Son, make these three one. That fades away. Next thing I know is I'm waking up at toys asking what happened. A few days later, broken ribs, collapsed lungs, broken clavicle. The woman that hit me, she was drinking, so she didn't know she hit me. So she kept going while I was underneath the car, probably another 25, 30 feet until people had bystanders, people that were outside jumped out and stopped her and said, you just hit somebody. And the only thing that saved me was my big wheel that literally got wedged under the back tire. So coming out of it, I knew something had happened, but it was like how do you intellectualize that? So you ate lunch last month on a Wednesday, but can you remember what you had on the Wednesday? 3rd of last month. So I knew I had lunch, but what did I have for lunch? So it was kind of like that. And I was extra sensitive. I was having these weird visions between the ages of like 4 and 11 until these memories started to come back. And I was wondering, wow, I kind of felt vindicated because I knew something strange had happened. But then I tried to talk to everybody, and that was the worst thing I could have done. And so I'll pause right there if you want to ask any questions or anything.
So who were the little girl and the old man then in your near-death experience, you think?
No idea. It was literally something I never had gotten or never asked. But I assume I was in a place where other people go, whether it was a waiting station or heaven. But, it was just exactly felt like you walked into the best time of your life, times a million.
Did you have any interaction with them, or did you just see them?
Other than seeing them and them noticing me and her laughing and then that laugh touching me, no. As soon as that laugh touched me, I became everything. It was like I was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I was love.
And so when you say like the Trinity, Father, Son, Mother, obviously, is that like the Trinity in Christianity? Like the mother obviously would probably be the Holy Spirit then?
You could say it's a interpretation, yeah. What happened was when they returned and spoke to me again, that was it. I was energetically changed forever. All of a sudden, I could see and perceive spirits and energy and all this other stuff. When meanwhile, I was trying to hide it most of my life. Hey, I had this experience, but it makes me feel awkward to talk about. Nobody wants to hear it. So it's just something that happens when you die, I figured, or it's something that happens, it's far away. I don't need to talk about it. And so in 2008, when they returned, the very first thing they began explaining to me was the Trinity, the divine blueprint that I had seen. And the law of polarity, which is they showed me the Trinity as a positive, negative, and a 0 point. And they began teaching me how to rewire my nervous system, things like that from an alternating current. And so this really became about non-duality in essence. And they were showing me father, mother, son as an electric, magnetic, and then an electromagnetic grounding point. So this came with like a lot of visitations afterwards, where I said, you got the wrong guy. So I don't know if you want me to go into that story.
Sure. So it sounds like you had your near-death experience in the 70s at age 4,
Yeah.
and then they started returning to you in visitation starting in 2008, kind of
Yeah.
explaining and breaking down what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I was, so in between the time where I had tried to start to talk about this and I knew something had happened and I thought it was extraordinary. So naturally I wanted to talk about it. Nobody really wanted to hear it. It made me feel awkward. I stuffed it down. I learned not to talk about it, even though I was perceiving like an incredible amount of input. And I always felt a little different. I was extra sensitive. I would have these visions that my parents actually brought me to an eye doctor for because I didn't know what was going on. So my vision would scramble and it would come back and it would scramble. But there were times I would have these visions of this line that was going through every person on earth. That was going through the center of their chest, connecting everyone. And some of them were turned on like light bulbs and some of them were not. And so even though they were all connected, it was like some were online and some were offline. So I learned to stuff it down. About age 18, I had my first car. I flipped that over at 75 miles an hour. 2 people fly out of the car. Lots of injuries from that. And then I sustained more, a couple motorcycles. I'm playing sports. So by the time I get to about 35, I'm waking up like the Tin Man. And I'm, this is around, I believe, 2008. I'm waking up and I am in the worst pain ever. I'm taking pain medication just to function and go to work. And at the time, I was a retail store manager. So I thought genuinely, because I became a skeptic, because I was like, if there is a God, I don't think God likes me, especially after the experience when I was young, and not being able to talk about it, and then all the pain. And so my perception of God was, if there was one, I don't think they like me. 2008, I'm going to have elbow surgery just to get scar tissue removed. And this was after sustaining like incredible amount of pain and having a hard time functioning, real dark period of my life. And I go in there, I go to have surgery, I get undressed, I put the gown on, and I literally had no medication at this point. I had just sat down and I felt some type of panic starting me. And I never had a panic attack. Like I was never a nervous person, but whatever that was, it was like panic on steroids. And it was like I wasn't in control. I said, I need to leave. And I didn't know why I was feeling that. And I went to sit up. And that's when the voice spoke to me for the first time in like 33 years. And they said, Stephen, put your head down. Everything's going to be all right. And I immediately recognized the voice. And when that happened, there was some type of warmth that started here and it spread out all over my body. And it literally sat me back down. Like I couldn't have sat up if I tried. And this love just opened up in me. And it was the first time in I don't know how many years I had tasted that place that I had went to. And this started some type of energetic reaction because there was like these surges of energy shooting through my body and visions. It was like someone hit rewind on an old tape reel and it was just boom, 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 boom. So I calmed down. I'm wondering what the heck that was because it had suddenly become real. This is not something in my past. This is not something that happens when you die. That I got spoken to, and that was the being. And I calm down. I go in and have surgery. A few days later, I'm woken up in the middle of the night with these balls of light in my room. And I'm going through the motions like, what is that? Turning all the lights on and off, wondering if it's cars. Of course, it's not. It looks like a plasma ball of light. And over the course of probably a couple of weeks, there's a few more, and they come and go, and they kind of just phase in and phase out. But you stay up till 3 in the morning. Eventually, you have to go to sleep. I had to go to work the next morning. Then starts the telepathy, which I had never been telepathic. I'm going into work, right? My mind's quiet. It's not a ton of chatter in there. Customers walk in. It's like there's other people having conversations inside my mind. And this took me a few days to kind of figure out what was happening. And then I would play games. I would ask questions in my mind, try to communicate with this person, then ask him a question out loud and stuff like that. So there was psychic stuff starting, and I had no idea how to control it. I don't know if you want to ask something. It looked like you might have had a question.
Oh, well, I mean, like with the psychic thoughts, were you reading? Were you sometimes hearing things that were like, kind of shocking? Like maybe they were thinking something negative about you or whatever.
Once in a while, it would be like just random stuff. Like, oh, I need to go do that later.
Huh.
Or like it would be random, and I was like, what is going on? Because I was never like that. And I'm just trying to function and go to work. And then suddenly this turns into like, all of a sudden I would have this emotion just shoot through me. I'd start crying for no reason at all. I was not sad. I'm just doing marketing. And so it's like, boom, and I would just start crying, and boom, I would start laughing, and people are looking at me like, what's going on with this guy? And then slowly I started to see these just little fragments of rainbow energy. Like wherever I went, I'm like, what is that? What is that? And that was mostly at first where I'm walking through, like, what is going on? I'm starting to see what looks like rainbows in the air, but it's not there. And so I would see these almost angelic shaped beings that looked like rainbow at like the top of my stairs when I'm walking up. And I would walk through it, and it would be like just another feeling, a wave of something that goes through you. Eventually, this turned into like perceiving human and non-human spirits and entities and things like that. And at first, it really freaked me out. It was like somebody hit a light switch on me. They just turned a light switch on, and I could see or something, but I had no control over it. So now I'm a retail store manager trying to wake up, function, go to work, and keep the pieces of my mind together at this time. I'm perceiving human and non-human spirits, thinking I'm being haunted, what's going on, telling them to leave. That's when I have like this really big breakthrough. So it's important to tell viewers I was not religious. My parents never brought me to church. Okay, maybe I should have got that out of the way in the first place. Had no religious background to go on. I'm driving home. I'm being really hard on myself. All my failures, trying to keep my marbles together, trying to be a dad and do whatever else. And this voice starts speaking to me to my right. And it starts telling me like how beautiful I am and all the people that love me and all the people that I've helped and all this good stuff, which I'm not used to hearing. So at the time, I'm still trying to, again, figure out what's going on with my mind. So I was kind of skeptical. And I didn't want to just leap into assuming anything. That was never me. So I'm like, who are you? That was my exact response. And the voice says, I am. Very first time I had ever heard this phrase, I am. And my response to this voice was, I am who? The voice says, I am. And then I say, yeah, I heard you the first time. I am who? And I pushed harder, and the voice said, I am. And it was like on the third one, I instantly felt every single emotion that I ever had in my life and saw every single memory I ever experienced separately, but at the same time. It happened simultaneously, but I felt them separately. And that's something I can't communicate other than non-duality and duality. as soon as this happens, I'm driving my car and it's instant. I can't even control it. It's just tears, tears, tears. I have to pull the car over. I'm crying for a good 10, 15 minutes. What the heck was that? Go home, look it up. There I am. And I start reading about it. I start grabbing Bibles. I start grabbing these other Gnostic books. I'm now looking into, what is this? Where can I find it? You know, trying to get a sense of grounding here. And my friends and family are now looking at me like I'm a little screwy. So, but I'm experiencing something that I can't talk to them about. I go and I'm going to work. I have this woman who falls right outside my store. She's in pain. She's an elderly woman, and we didn't have much payroll, so I was the only one there. So I was the first one that saw it, and she hits the ground and she's hurting. And I go out there right away. Someone comes out next door, and I say, "Go call the EMT." And I put my hand on her back just to console her, and she looks at me and she goes, "I'm all warm and I have no pain." And I went, wow. I had no idea what's happening. Whoa, what is she talking about? But I felt the warmth go up my arm, and I went back to my job after they came, and I couldn't get my mind off what had happened because it was just too real. It was strange, and so that just started the slew of strangeness. Pretty soon, I'm perceiving all these other beings around me, be them human, non-human. I'm literally learning how to just kind of speak to them, move them on, give them whatever they need to hear as far as love, forgiveness, and things like that. And I'm like, who sent you here? And they're telling me different. They're like, one would say God, one would say Jesus, one would say an angel, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not buying it. I'm simply trying to get back to a place of sanity at the time. And so I was, here comes the medium stuff and all that. And I didn't want anything to do with it. Then comes a visit from these beings calling themselves the Galactic Federation, Arcturians. And I don't know if you want me to pass into that or if you want to ask any questions about all the psychic hoopla.
Oh, no, you can talk about the Galactic Federation. That is interesting.
Sure. So I'll back up to working at the game store, grabbing the Bibles. I started to try, I would leave work and I'd go to every church I could find to try to talk to them about it. I was like, there's something in me and I couldn't explain it. I could feel it. I was having time losses. It was like I would be in one place, I would experience something, and then I'd be in it again, just for a short period of time. It wasn't long, but there was different shifting things happening. So Arcturians, these beings, I'm sitting on my bed and I'm just, I don't know what I'm doing, watching TV or something at the time, but I'm eating a bowl of Cheerios. Don't know why it's relevant, but every time I tell the story, they want me to tell you I was eating Cheerios anytime they showed up. And I never ate Cheerios. So sitting there eating Cheerios, and I can feel the pressure of the room change. Something shifted. And there was a pressure on me. And I look in the corner of the room, and I could see that slightly rainbowish, almost cloakish energy. And I'm like, is there something in the corner of my room? And I just asked myself that question. And that's when they speak to me and they say, we are the Divine Council of Nine. We're from the Galactic Federation. We're Arcturians. And we're basically, they tell me they are here to help me with my evolution, and that it was time for me to remember who I was and what I was here to do. They kind of give me like that gentle nudge that it's time to remember. They say that they're going to help me with my overcoming of the self, because I'm going to help guide the world in the next stage of evolution for its species to a more energetic based being. And that was mostly what that was their first liner. They're here to help me. And then I tell them, I'm pretty sure you have the wrong guy. That was exactly my sentence. So they left with one thing, that I was a divine instrument, but that I was out of tune, and that reality wasn't happening to me, it was happening through me. Because up to that point, when they had told me that, I was looking at all these manifestations as something outside of me. I'm like, get away, leave me alone, get away. I don't want nothing to do with you. But I didn't realize it was actually a lot of the multidimensional selves being broadcast through me, and that I had gotten a gift to see something and interact in the quantum realm like not many other people had. Um, they gave me a little more information the second time they visited me, but after the first time, I'd never heard of this stuff. And I picked up my phone and I looked it up, and I'm finding slews and slews of information. I'm like, all right, maybe that was legit. And it sounded they sounded, when they communicated to me, very clear, a bit different than when you would perceive a human spirit or anything else like that. It was a bit different. And so I looked up, and here's the information. And the next time they visited me, I think it was like a week or two or something like that, I began to listen a little more. And that's when they start to tell me that I need to reconnect the Trinity, that this is a circuit that became disconnected because I became misaligned with my truth. My thoughts, they're like, here's the first clues. Your thoughts need to match how you feel, and how you feel needs to match how you act, and you discard the rest. And so they began showing me like this column of light that I had saw during my NDE that that had become somewhat disconnected. And they began explaining the law of polarity to me, that my conscious and subconscious, or the positive and negative, had become disconnected because I experienced trauma and began storing it in my body instead of processing it, which was causing me to short circuit into alternate realities, and thus much easier to be controlled and manipulated by negative extraterrestrial influences and things like that. So they're teaching me all this landscape, if you will. They're teaching me to reconnect my mind, my heart, and my body with truth. That was the very first thing. They teach me that I am my divine blueprint, and to begin believing that I am this, and to start discarding these other identities. And then they start teaching me about singularity in the Christ. And they say, you have a sun, S-U-N, in the center of your chest. And go read the teachings of Jesus. This is the Christ. This is a portal. This is a stargate, that if you can open it and operate it, it's capable of collapsing all perceptions of reality into one truth. And so there was the duality into non-duality. And so they were teaching me that there was a couple times they showed up, other beings as well. I was sitting out in my yard. I'm sitting in my lawn chair, and I'm just chilling. And all of a sudden, I'm getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And to this point, I still had a lot of pain, still trying to figure things out. They're just giving me information. They would back off for a while, and then they would allow me to work it out with the information they gave me. And so, time goes by. I'm sitting out in my yard. I start to feel lighter and lighter and lighter, and I have no pain. And this is probably 2013-ish. I have no pain absolutely in my body. I'm in this white light, and then there's these beings that speak to me, and they say, we're the Sidriel. We're here to help you understand the nature of the quantum reality matrix that you're in. They're like, you're a being of energy that logged in to experience playing this character, but you're not the character you're playing. And I was like, that was the biggest, oh my God, moment, because it helped me unattach. Then they began teaching me again how to unify from an alternating current to a direct current. So they basically told me, you're in an alternating current. This is why you can't sustain the light in you. You're bouncing between darkness and light, but they're one. And you need to basically, in their language, begin taking all negative charge in the form of neurotransmission and depositing it in the heart. So they start to show me how to start up this thing in my heart. this divine technology. So now I'm having dreams, like I'm on these ships and stuff, and I would wake up covered in sweat. Dreams were very lucid. Not sure if I was there, if it was a dream, but at the very first time, and it's always the same ship, but the very first time I had to be in the medical bay, they had to do something to me before they walked me around the other ship, parts of the ship. There were children, very highly intelligent children, energy beings that were like childlike souls that were getting ready to come into our experience. And during these times, the dreams are spaced, whether it's weeks or months apart, but it's always the same ship. Only time I'd wake up covered in sweat. I'd have these like diagrams in my mind. And it was odd because I'd go to work and I'd touch something and I would instantly just know how to take it apart and put it back together, and never even touched it. And that quieted down. Like, it doesn't happen anymore, but it was super intense at the time. So I could touch something, I knew how to take it apart and put it back together. It was strange because I knew that I was my future self guiding my past self in the present moment, and that I had unified this linear circuit that they were teaching me about that we had been trapped in, or our energy of perception had been trapped in. And so there was a lot going on, man. So I had to leave that job. I started senior care, and I kind of consider it like part of my journey. It was like I was very intellectual. I moved down into my heart, and I started working in dementia and Alzheimer's. And that was when I had some of the biggest breakthroughs, when I had the knowings of looking God straight in the eyes in the form of all these other people. And I was like, wow, so how I care for this person is my relationship with my creator. Suddenly this love story revealed itself in everything around me. And like, I knew it was my purpose to have a love story with creation. And so eventually I left that job, and it snowballed into helping people because these beings taught me how to use quantum entanglement, that we were all connected through the field, so that I could connect these people to and help them remember what they are and unify the stuff that's going on in their body. So I've had a lot of healings and other things like that, but I will slow down and let you ask any questions.
Well, I was wondering, like, I've heard of the Octarians before, who are like spiritually advanced aliens, and then there's also, like, on the dark side, there's kind of reptilians, which can be, more on the dark side. But I'm just wondering, are aliens like Octarians the same as angels, or are they still distinct? And are demons and reptilians the same, or are they distinct?
Yeah, great question. And I'm not here to shape anybody's perception of reality or religion or anything like that, because again, I think we should all have a relationship with the energy of love itself, moment to moment, in our mind and our heart. But from my understanding is that the angels were in a different realm, and that the Arcturians and the extras who are working to help humanity towards unity with itself and out of the misalignment of duality that it's in, they're on a different level. They're on more like galactic space, whereas the angels are more or less frequencies that we can embody within us. They're all within us, and they're all, they're available to us, but we hardly gather enough potential to reach their frequency. And so the angelic beings, to me, are in a different space. And they're the ones who started to make contact with me as well at first. Like, I couldn't avoid it. It was, no matter what I did, like, I'd be driving, I would see the names of angels, I would hear somebody say the word, it'd be all around me. And I'd feel pulled to certain locations. Like, I went to the river one day, guided, and I sat there. Me being me, I'm like, all right, God, I'm at the river. What do you want me to do? Where are you? Show up. Nothing happens. I get back to my car and I start the car. I'm like, what did you want me to go there for? Start the car and the radio's on. I'm not playing a song. And the very first song comes out of the radio is going down to the river to pray, A. And so the radio's telling me I went down to the river to pray. And so there was a lot of angelic guidance like that. demons, reptilians, different roles. To me, a demon is not going to bother you unless you start giving it to fuel for it to teach you where it resides. And so I see that as more of a polarity thing. There could not be a light without a dark. You wouldn't know the value of joy and love without sorrow. You know, you wouldn't feel it, you wouldn't know it. And so I see the angelic realm as the polarity, as it was explained to me, the seven archangels governing the seven chakras, the seven lampstands, if you will, and then below that, the seven demonic princes, who literally have no power unless you give them your identity and your power. And so there's an identity and free will thing here. And that's where the divine blueprint came in anchoring my identity above the things I'm doing and what I'm experiencing in the word of creator. So I see them as kind of serving some of the same purposes. However, the reptilians, from what I understand, they measure themselves, okay? And again, they can't mess with you unless you have the fuel inside you of judgment, shame, regret, guilt, all this lower stuff. If you're holding on to that and need to forgive yourself and others, that's when you're going to be modulated into alternate realities where you're going to be harvested from of your emotional energy and your quantum energy. And so literally it's like being mad at a dog for being a dog or a cat for being a cat. However, the key, from my understanding, is divine law and divine intelligence that's built into me, the Christ within me, the Son, the law of one, like all these messages over time until Jesus showed up and showed me how to make the two one. Hopefully that gives some answers.
It's kind of interesting because, like, obviously what's big in the news right now is the Epstein files, and people are talking about there's connections between Satanism and demons, and some have also talked about seeing him take a different form that looked reptilian. Like, is he shape shifting? Is he demon possessed? There's like some crazy stuff going on there, that
Yeah,
we're starting to find out.
and the Arcturians in their visits, this was again before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you're going to see things that don't make sense. You're going to see natural disasters. So what do? I go out and get dry food and water, and my family's like, "Are you all right?" Again, I'm coming home with Bibles and dried food and water, and this is before anything. And then 2020, I'm starting to understand some of it. So it's like they told me the world was going to change. I wasn't going to understand it, but that it was going to be a cleansing of the collective subconscious of humanity. Okay. And I was going to see things rise to the surface, but the things that I was seeing were not exactly the people. And to focus on the energy and to see the best in people and to see the light in them and to understand that my battle was with energy. It wasn't with the person. It was the energy in their subconscious. And when that went away, the person would change, they would shift, because naturally we're the ones traveling the emotional scale. We're not the emotional scale, but we're being modulated and played somewhat because we're like antennas and receivers. And so, yes, back then they told me we were going to see a lot of stuff that didn't make sense, but that we were getting an upgrade because of the kind of virtual reality experience that we're in. It kind of had a bug in it. I don't know. But that's kind of how it was explained to me, that we were getting an upgrade where we were going to be able to intuitively process distortion very quickly using mind-heart connection rather than having it have to manifest in my body and teach me in the physical. And so that began the rewiring of the brain to body nervous system signal to brain to heart to body to reconstitute the column of light. But I probably went off on a branch there, but
I mean, it's kind of like there is a spiritual awakening going on, and we love it when we see all the positive light things. But maybe part of it is that there's going to be a lot of darkness that's being revealed too. which isn't very
Absolutely.
pleasant, but it's part of the process too, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just our job to hold love. Like that darkness is going to rise. And if it triggers me, then it triggers something in my subconscious that I haven't healed. And so it's just my job to, to become love. And this is going to get you through 2026. And the, information and things coming and going, love and truth. Intimately know what those energies feel like in your body and become them. Because there's going to be darkness. However, if I do have a strong sense enough of my identity and I do not attach to it and I acknowledge it and see it as the wounded inner child shadow of the world, I acknowledge it as a child with gratitude, love, forgiveness. That means I don't tolerate, you know, but I know right now for me to bring more pain and hate into the world is going to feed that imbalance of polarity. And a planet, a living being, is showing us that she feels it. But yeah,
So, like,
acknowledge the darkness
you saw
within
the
you.
creation of the universe.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh,
I
I
was
was
just
just
going
going
to
to say
say,
that you saw the creation of the universe.
oh, I don't know if I've ever said that. The blueprint. It was like looking and nothing was there but electric blue of the energetic structure of the original planet and then buildings. Like the structures of buildings were kind of overlaid on it. So again, it was like looking at a blueprint, except I was looking around me. And then understanding that my divine blueprint was an image of wholeness that contained the word of God that was capable of causing a singularity within my body. And there was an image in me already to kind of reconnect myself to myself, but I had to claim that image and become it. And so there was an energetic equation of unity of polarity there.
And so, like, so you talked about the polarity, and you talked about the blueprint, and you see us as, like, in our ideal state, we're perfect, right? That in our authentic state, we're perfect.
I think, absolutely. I think every single version of everybody is sacred and it's a sacred experience and we'll understand it not with our human mind but when we go back to where we are after we're done being these actors. And so like when I see somebody I see the best in them. I try to, I don't judge what they're doing. That judgment is definitely allowed for God. And some of the things that I've seen happen supernaturally, healing wise, other things by energy, that's how I know that person can quantum leap into the highest version of themselves. Because I was somebody who was riddled with pain, who the doctors were like, you're going to need surgery here, you're going to need this, you're going to need this. And I'm like, once I figured out how to reverse the polarity in my system and unionize these dual currents, the pain was gone. Now I don't experience pain because it's grounded out of my system before it can manifest. My nervous system is set that way to handle this information and these signals in that manner. And so I think everybody's capable of it. I don't think I'm special. I think I saw something that everybody's connected to, and that if they know themselves deep enough and want to, that everybody can claim back their sovereignty and heal themselves.
So, in terms of unionizing our plurality, our polarity, how do we start to do that? Is, like, meditation something we would do? Is there other practices? What do we do to get there?
Sure, definitely. Meditation is awesome. What I've found, and I found this because I was getting out of work and I was exhausted and my psyche was shot and I didn't want to go home and tell my family all this weird stuff that happened. So I needed time to myself. I used to go in nature a lot as a kid. I would get out of work. I would go into nature during this time when I needed time to myself, and I would sit there and I would just be breathing. I'm just sitting on a rock. I'm not intending to breathe. Okay, so at this time, I have no spiritual background. This is happening to me. I'm developing over the years. So sitting in nature and breathing, and I feel this line of something going up and down inside me. And I'm like, what the heck is that? It feels like something is a yo-yo swimming up and swimming down, swimming up and swimming down. And it's a line of like excited energy. It feels exciting. That's what it feels like. But it's a thin line. Each time I breathe, it'd go up, it'd drop down. And that was my breath. And so that's when my guides come in, these beings, and they tell me, speak to it, say thank you. And then that's when I get the first instructions to start speaking to my body. And I say right there, thank you. And as soon as I said thank you, and my thought hit my breath, it was like whoosh, this big warmth opened up in me. And so there I knew, as I was meditating, that when I was breathing, to introduce gratitude, thanks, love, that this would instantly, like throwing bounce in the dryer when you don't want your socks to stick together, that this would instantly do something to my body energetically where I had no pain. And so I was witnessing, like, I'd leave nature, I'd go home and I'd be like, dang, I got pain again. I'd go out into nature with the pain, all of a sudden the pain gone. So seeing that pattern over and over, I realized it was the energetic mapping sequence, the way my neurotransmission was being processed, or some type of input. Pain. So literally after all the acts stuff, the pain in my body was because it was stuck being processed by an emotional charge that I had not let go of. Very first thing, speak to it. Say thank you to your pain. Thank you for what you're teaching me. I send you into the heart with gratitude and forgiveness. This is going to start to release the emotional charge from your cellular memory, and start to unify things in the heart space.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to like, biofeedback, where you speak or you focus on different parts of your body. And I've heard gratitude's also, something that profoundly changes you. So there are kind of like practices, meditation practices and whatnot that kind of start to tap into that,
Yeah,
that already
yeah,
exists.
exactly. And the more genuine you can get about it, and this is why I like to look at my lower emotions like they're children, makes it so much easier to give love and compassion and forgiveness. Bigger I can get that love and compassion, the more I can release, the more I can unify in myself. Um, and so it's literally taking the action and just the witness to your emotions, that these are my inner child, my anxiety, fear, worry, stress, et cetera, and giving them the love they need. And then the truth of who you are, and claiming that I was already loved. So there's a little subconscious programming in the morning, bearing witness to the input and being the modulator throughout the day so that these energies are a little more coherent in your system and not so resistant, by acknowledging them. And then at the end of the day, I kind of thank everything. And now, one of the other big things they began to tell me was thank people through the quantum field and forgive them through the quantum field, and just ask for the same return. And as I did this, I was literally able to be around family that I wasn't able to be around before. And there was no emotional charge. I was doing this nightly. I thank you, I forgive you, everyone I ever shared time with, and I ask for the same return. That began to release so many toxic, entangled systems that I was in emotionally. Because again, I'm the energy living in the nervous system that's interfacing with reality in my body, that's like a salt and potassium battery that runs positive and negative currents. I don't want to think I'm that negative current as I'm going between them. Okay. And so, and that, yeah, that's, I know there's a lot there. So,
Well, I mean, like when you said that you touched that woman and she felt warmth, do you think you had tapped into a spiritual connection, like you were part of that field in that moment?
yeah, I mean, I've come to learn later, like I didn't know what was happening in the moment and it took me a while, but come to learn that there is life force energy cycling through all of us, and that there was some type of circuit that was kind of like going through both of us, like we're sharing something, if that makes sense. Um, and that we can all share it. It's crazy. But it was like when I touched her, we were both being unified in that moment as one. Like, in the quantum entanglement experiments where the photon vibrating at a certain rate begins to cause the other one to vibrate at the same rate, regardless of time and space. And so I can actually do what I do now distantly and have effects on people's bodies and things like that. So it's incredible. Like, I firmly believe and know that we are light, and can I kind of claim some of that authority given to me, and so if you peel back even more layers, you can get into, the popular phrase is ye are gods, right? You probably heard that before thrown around. And the real translation is Elohim. And I believe we are somewhat angelic beings that fell in frequency. And we're now remembering what we are. But I think it's a free will choice to serve light, unity, in the Christ. And I make that choice of my own free will.
Well, so is that like how Jesus operated when he healed us? That he was like totally, in tune with that frequency, and he could heal people. And then he laid his hands on his apostles, and then they went out and did the same thing, healing people. That they had that touch, that frequency going through them.
Yeah, I think they had some divine spark, right? They must have. I'm not exactly sure, though I've had interactions with, whether you want to call it a hologram or whatever it is, when we were visited. But yeah, I've had interaction with that Jesus energy, and it was the coolest energy ever. And he was the chillest guy. And I don't take it for 100%. This is what it is. I like to experience things. What does it feel like? What are the results? What does the fruit look like? But I believe we all have that in us, divine spark, and we can all do that, and that he was showing us how to do something. But I think a lot of people chose not to follow that portion, where they talk about binding the Azazel hand and foot. That became interesting to me. So I searched root languages. I found subconscious. So I went really deep diving into different things. But I believe, that he was showing us how to heal, not only ourselves, but others in the world. I can't give him enough credit, man.
Well, so like when you talk to the Arturians, they're basically, I mean, it's like they're all on the same team. Christ, the Arturians, the angels, they're kind of working all together, right?
Yeah. It's almost like the trash and recycling people, right? They're all working for the same thing, but they're working on different levels. One of them recycles, one of them throws away trash, one of them might even go through the trash for the stuff that's recyclable. But there's definitely some type of system here that we're in, for sure, as beings of energy. And I think we're mostly neutral beings, but we come in and we get a root program installed. And then we get some other programs installed, whether it's from parental structures or things like that. And those are our identities, right? And then we wake up and we're like, man, I don't like that identity. And we try to find something deeper. And that interested me, as well as the neuroscience. Like, what is happening to my body when all this energy is going through me? And I arrived at neuroscience action potentials, and I began to discover the release of negative charge stored in the cellular memory when we hit a certain voltage threshold in the system. And so there's a lot going on there, but they taught me about 0-point energy and kind of how to use that for healing, and that we all have it.
Was 0-point energy, is that how aliens power technology a lot of times? They have kind of this 0-point energy that they tap into?
Yeah, it is. It holds tremendous potential to be the bridge between polarity. And you talk about fuel, become accountable to the energy of love and acknowledge every negative thing you ever caused to the world, any hurt you ever caused. Acknowledge it and send it into your heart while claiming your sovereignty and surrender. And you're talking about fuel. When these positive and negatives come together, they create spin. And there's a tremendous amount of power there to ground yourself into truth and the best reality you want to be in, because that's what your 0 point energy is there for. It's a maximum ground state because we've been so manipulated and vulnerable through our identity, and we've had so many attachments to our identity and labels. This is what gets us back to the original point. But yes, 0 point energy is how they move through thought, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't exactly always need crafts. They're definitely interdimensional.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is like when you talk about sending it to your heart and then it changes it through love, it's kind of like a recycling process because we send all the garbage, the darkness down. It gets broken down and then recycled into something good. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like how forgiveness works with Christ and everything. Like, we give it to Christ, who's, represented, centered in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
He breaks it down and then reforms it into something else. That's, a beautiful thing. Is
Yeah,
that kind of what you're getting at?
exactly. It transforms it into a coherent material that I can learn from rather than be stuck in, And that's what them and all these other energies did by guiding me to Jesus. Like I was not a religious person. And, I'd walk in, I'd look at a still picture of Jesus on my buddy's grandmother's wall. And that was pretty normal until I was about 35, 36. And, I had this experience, but now all I can tell you is it's the greatest love ever. I was never going to trust humans to love me again. That was the point I was at in my life. Once I started to feel that and open that and unify these two energies now by becoming accountable for what I create, by acknowledging it and surrendering it instead of storing it, judging people, projecting it on other people. As soon as I started, that negative neurotransmission goes to Christ. That's when I was lifted rather than holding on to it. But it brought me home.
Well, and I think I don't know if you've ever read this in the Bible. It talks about the reconciliation of all things, that eventually all things will be reconciled back to the light, to God.
Yeah.
And that, even if something is like horribly dark and has to be completely broken down, and at some point, even if it's totally broken down, destroyed, the remnants are going to be recycled back and go back into God anyway.
Yeah.
So it's all going back to the same thing. You may not want to be totally broken down, but it's all going to get to the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like defragmenting a hard drive. If anybody's ever had an old computer that becomes slow because there's old data on it, it's kind of like that. And the information of the collective subconscious of humanity needs to be defragmented before we can expand and upgrade and really solidify this higher grid, where we can it's going to be a lot easier to connect in and things like that. So I see everything as energy and data.
And I mean, that's kind of, and that's kind of like where hell comes in, because it's like hell isn't just a place in, the spiritual dimension, but it could be a place right now. And it's sort of like the purification process that sometimes isn't necessarily pleasant, but necessary. But it's to purify you and take you to a different state, because it's kind of like you talk about like fire and brimstone. And it's like, well, fire is a purification agent. It isn't pleasant to go through, but that's part of what needs to happen sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what it was for me. For like from the start of these being contacting me, it was searching for ways to purify my mind and my soul from the things I was waking up to. That because I didn't like myself in the mirror. And I realized I was the cause of all my issues, and that began my journey of unification and overcoming the self. For sure, there's a purification happening within us, and it's happening in the outer world as well. But we got to trust the plan for sure, man. Have faith.
Mhm. Well, so I think you're teaching a lot of this stuff, aren't you? Like, have you written books? Do you teach it in some way?
Yeah, I do. I have clients regularly, and I sometimes travel. I've been to speaking at IANS in Phoenix and down in North Carolina and a few different places, but I also have sessions and stuff online. In the process of I've helped in a chapter of a book, but I'm now writing my own, as well as kind of like a formula to unify the opposing fields I may be experiencing and the things that may be causing distortion and feedback and interference. Uh, it's a process of tuning, cultivating, learning how to sustain this neutral charge in me, not attach, give my body and stuff and mind time to heal from the world. But it's a way it's a way for us to return to that love. And the biggest teaching was that you can go to heaven, you don't have to die again, but you got to put your mind there first and your heart there. And that was the big thing, the big moment. And once I realized, holy cow, they visit me, I have no pain. They leave, I have pain again. How do I get back to the place where I have no pain while I'm in my body? Wait a minute, I'm going back to heaven. No matter what it takes, I'm getting there in my mind and my heart and my energy. And I'm going to allow that to be the program and embodiment in my body. So I'm going to bring it in the truth and make it real. And so one of the other things that helped me greatly was they taught me how to learn how to speak to my body as if something's already finished and not negotiate with the feedback of the subconscious mind. Because you ever stand in front of a mirror and you're like, I'm beautiful, I'm successful. And you might have felt the mirror go, I don't know about that, but that's your subconscious feedback. And so they taught me how to kind of recognize that and kind of deal with it and modulate it. Learn to speak to the body with truth and allow the body to take that programming instead of the other programming. Biofeedback, if you will.
Well, I mean, do you ever find yourself? Yeah. I mean, do you ever find yourself um, getting kind of distracted, like getting caught up in the moment where you're angry, you're stressed, you're depressed, I mean, do you still get all those feelings, like, and maybe you're kind of and out of line for that moment? Do you still feel that way sometimes?
Yeah, once in a great while. And I would say because it's almost like you have bandwidth, like internet, but you can have a large portion of the bandwidth being taken up by negative data, and that's going to cause it to happen more often. Whereas if you unify that negative data in real time before your body stores it, as well as uninstalling and reinstalling new programs from the old data, it's going to happen less often, and it's probably going to take something that you don't even realize you have in your subconscious that's going to irritate you. So I think the last time I was angry was like really angry. Where it like got me was I bought a car and it had water in the headlight, and they tried to tell me it was normal, and I'm like, dude, I didn't buy a submarine. And so that was the last time I kind of got irritated, which was probably a year and a half ago. I realized how sacred my nervous system is, that it renders the reality I'm going to live in. And so I'm really, really particular about what neurotransmission I allow. Plus, I've spent time rewiring it so my system generally can process it or ground it out pretty quickly. Um, However, the water is supposed to be in a headlight thing got me.
Hmm. So where can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
Sure. If you did want to reach out, I am at trinityquantumhealth.com. TRINITYQUANTUMHEALTH, trinityquantumhealth.com. I also run groups like once a month that people can join without paying. I try to really get back and share that energy of unity with people because it does feel good. And I think we all deserve to remember and experience what we are before we get to go home.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. Is there one final word you'd like to leave with the audience before we close out?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Um, become intimate with the energy of love. Understand even when nobody's around, we are having a relationship with the energy of creation itself. And if you can just be aware of what am I creating to separate me from love? Let me just acknowledge that with gratitude and unify it with love, because you are the energy of love, modulating your human experience through your perception of it. Work on not attaching your opinion, acknowledging things with love. In those ways, you're going to help your body. You're not going to have as much pain in your body. You're not going to have as much disease and illness. If you can acknowledge reality without attaching identity to it or the need to control it, and understand we all need to be brought back to love. That's the one thing we have in common, is this right here. So have a love story moment to moment with creation itself, because it's reaching out to have a love story with you.